So, the thing that I didn't take into consideration, we're watching all these movies now. We're going to the theater every week, seeing every movie. It's so much fun. The one thing that I did not take into consideration, though, is watching the same trailers over and over and over again. In some cases, it's a blessing, Furiosa. In other cases, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Which one?
We were kvetching earlier about the Quiet Place Day 1 trailer, which we've both seen a combined 150 times at this point.
I cannot watch that damn trailer another time. I love Lupita Nyong'o.
Love her.
She's great. She looks great in this. There's Digimon Hansu's in it.
Come on.
I mean,
no, I'll see the movie. I like Quiet Place. Let's go.
I cannot watch this
the trailer
again.
When the trailer came up during Challengers, I used that opportunity to go to the bathroom.
That's
also,
a good call. That's a good call.
Ever since we've been doing this so regularly.
I sat there just steaming in my seat.
I leave my house or work like a minute before the movie starts, quote unquote, because there's 20 minutes of trailers minimum, usually 25. And that's kind of like, that's a beautiful grace period. You roll into the theater 5 minutes after your movie starts, you go to the bathroom, you get popcorn, you talk to the personnel and to ask them what movies done. Just like fucking talk, and I just stroll in last minute. That's the move, man. That's the move.
That's the move, because these movies are not starting any sooner. Every week they're starting later and later.
As long as I get there in time, if you see an IMAX movie, for the thing where it's like 10, 9, 8, 7 IMAX,
Yep.
As long as I'm there for that, I'm good. I don't need any of the other trailers.
This week on Movies, baby, 2 for Challengers, please, but not The Late Show, because I've got to get home and watch The Beekeeper for the 3rd time this week. That's right. Joe and I are reviewing this week's box office winner, Challengers, starring Zendaya and a couple of dopes. We're also reviewing a movie that's been out since January, but we just saw it for the first time last week, and we cannot stop talking about it. I'm talking about The Beekeeper, starring Jason Statham.
The Beekeeper.
Oh, I think we're also going to debut a new segment we should do more, where we're going to look at what's coming out this weekend and make some predictions about the box office this weekend, because it's a big weekend at the movies. Whew, we got a lot to get through, so let's get started. Joe, are you ready?
You know it, Brett.
Oh, Margot, roll that theme song. Oh, there it is.
It's like dipping into my ice cold plunge in the morning.
I can't get enough movies, baby. I can't get enough movies, baby. How about you? Do you have it bad too? Whenever one ends, it's like the death of a friend. I get to wishing that there were 2 more reels, but then a voice cries out, "Move, baby, you're in my seat, and you don't want to mess with who the Philly movie freak." Whew.
I can't get enough movies, baby. I can't get enough movies, baby. Yes, it's true. Oh, I've got it bad too.
We're sick.
Every night of the year, like the moon, I appear at all the movie theaters all over town.
Every single one.
Cut to black. Roll credits, movies, baby. Lost in a fog, and I need someone to talk to.
Hi.
Hey, it's the Georgia Movie Dog. Gog, gog, gog.
I can't get enough movies, baby.
I can't get enough movies, baby.
Can't get enough movies,
I
baby.
can't get enough movies,
Yeah!
Welcome to Movies, Baby, the weekly show where we break down the hottest movie news, review the latest releases, shout out forgotten classics, and prophesy the future of Hollywood. I'm Joe Cilio, a.k.a. the Philly Movie Freak, and I'm joined by my co-host, Brett Boehm, a.k.a. the Georgia Movie Dog.
Go Dogs! The biggest new movie this week was, of course, Luca Guadagnino's Challengers. We saw it. We both saw it.
We both saw it
separately, as is our.
We saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood together, and we saw.
That's right, we did.
And we saw a screening of a Maniac where the director William Lustig was in attendance.
Yes,
and those are the only two movies we've been together in the past 7 years.
That's because the most important thing on Movies, Baby, as on Weekend at Bergman's, is honesty, and I think we don't want to.
No, because what if we are joking around, or
I can feel you really enjoying it,
then it's going to
affect me.
I could whisper in your ear something absolutely fucking hilarious that would crack you the fuck up, stuff like that. You know.
Nope. Got to keep the experiment clean.
That's right.
Baby.
That's right.
So, Joe, what did you think of Challengers?
Honey, I'm always excited for a Luca. When Luca's firing up a picture, I'm ready to rock and roll. I remember in college when I Am Love came out with Tilda Swinton, and it took my acting program by storm. All the art kids couldn't shut the fuck up about it, and I enjoyed it as well. And I've enjoyed most of his movies, even the ones that are just okay. Like Bones and All has a lot of issues, and it has that somber tone, but it has a lot of things I liked about it as well. I understand the criticism of Luca. He's sort of criticized for being stylish without substance, or perhaps like artistic for artistic's sake, sort of showy, sort of obsessed with children, having sex, stuff like that. Which I get, those are fair criticisms, but I think there's a lot of stuff in his filmography actually to celebrate artistically, stylistically, and Challengers brings a lot of what I love about Luca to the forefront. But it does so in the context of fun and energy instead of sort of the somber moodiness and like little emo tension that he was flirting with in Bones and All. But some things remain true. From I Am Love, when they shoot the beautiful prawns and they're eating the prawns sexually, to Call Me By Your Name, when, the peach, of course, right? And in Bones and All, cannibalism is essentially sexualized eating. And in Challengers, once again, foreplay, titillation, and desire are on the menu. And in Challengers, we get a thoroughly sensual, sexy little flick that's a heck of a lot of fun, that's only trying to titillate and delight. It's not really interested in politics, sexual politics, of the wealthy and of the driven and of the young. But it's a very, very nice movie where we're just going to enjoy two things. Number one, tennis, aka sports, competition, the thrill of that, and the thrill of doing it well on film. And secondly, watching beautiful people be beautiful and luxuriating in that and having that be an experience in and of itself. I don't need this to be pornography. What's more delicious is sort of his big, sensual drippiness, arty yearning that comes through his frames. His cinematographer he worked with on this picture was the same that he worked with on Suspiria, his remake of the Argento horror film, which I like very, very much, starring Dakota Johnson and Tilda Swinton. And they also work together on Call Me By Your Name. All right. So like they're getting the crew back together. This person's name, it's a Thai name, so please excuse me. But I want to shout out when shout outs are due. Sayambu Mukdipram, who is very famous in Thailand because he's the guy who's always working with Apachongpong Weir Sethakul. Again, you all know who I'm talking about, the famous Thai art tour. And I just like fucked his name up.
Uncle
Me.
That
yes,
director?
yes. And he did the cinematography on that.
Wow.
So this photographer is like excellent, right? So he's really given something fun with Luca. Luca also understands the sexual dynamics of consumerism. And in this movie, he sort of triangulates the sexual desire of consumerism, of competition, and of like, the human form, but the male form in particular. Mike Feist, he loves like his back and his like porcelainness and his like whiteness and his chiselness. And then in Josh O'Connor, he finds his like, vaguely ethnic, rogue, big dick swinging ego boy. And he luxuriates over his like absolutely ripped up body, his sweat, his swagger, and his ego. Which is just like incredibly titillating. And I got to see the picture in IMAX, which was a thrill because I wanted to, I don't want to just see Mike Feist sweat. I want to see my reflection into the beads of his sweat. So I went to see the IMAX. So this movie, well, what is it about? I think just to kind of re-say it really fast, Zendaya plays a tennis prodigy who gets injured early on in her career. And on her ascent to stardom, she meets two boys that fall head over heels, in lust with her. Art, who eventually is the good boy, kind of safe bet, loves tennis, kind of a nice guy, played by Mike Feist, and whom Zendaya goes on to marry, but not before she has a wild tryst with the scrappy and bad boy played slyly and charmingly by Josh O'Connor. That creates a tension between the three of them. It sets up early in their meeting each other, the three of them. Zendaya directs a almost threesome where she leaves the two boys blue-balled, making out with each other, and she exits the room. And none of them come for 10 years until the very, 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 very end of the movie, when they all come in unison, when they all decide to become friends again, after they've backstabbed each other for 10 years, ruined each other's lives, fucked each other back and forth, and been all types of duplicitous. But we don't, that's when the sex happens, at the very, very, very last shot of the film. Everything for Luca in this movie and so many of his movies, he's like, I'm going to focus on the foreplay, LOL, literally tennis, and foreplay, anticipation, sexual desire. That is such a delicious part of like sex. And it's such a fun one to obsess over, which he does, I think, stylishly and beautifully. People like to call his work hyper stylized, like it's some sort of like he's some kind of fucking asshole. It's like, honestly, it's like, it's hyper stylized. Like, why? Because he didn't just fucking shoot coverage because he tried this and that. And I think that he gets very excited about doing a sports movie here. I think he has fun elongating the end and trying every single second, just edging and 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 edging in this movie, all the way up until the very, very end, where, Zendaya yells, "Come on" again, like she did when she won in her glory days for the first time in the victory of her two boys that she tore apart just to spend a decade trying to manipulate back together. And then she gets some sort of release out of. Very fun movie. Very fun movie. There's nothing too much to read into. It's just, you have a relationship with a person probably, right? And you like them or they don't like them, and you break up and you don't break up. So you know all about all of that. You've played a game before, so you know about tennis, and you know what beautiful people look like, right? And it's not a crime to look at beautiful people. And it's not a crime to photograph them so beautifully. And this movie has all that in spades. Additionally, it's been well reported upon, but I'll just have to say it here. I very much liked what Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor brought to Challengers. I thought the score was super duper exciting. Basically a cheat code for stress, anticipation, power, all the beautiful things that make up the story. So I was very, very pleasantly surprised. I'm very happy that he got out of his dour bones and all register, that he was almost slipping into the sort of yearning pastiche of Call Me By Your Name. And I'm glad that he sort of activated the yearning and created the energetic, exciting, titillating, funny, fun Challengers. Brett, what'd you think of the movie Challengers?
Challengers. Well, I mean, as you can tell from my outfit, I went into this screening, into this week, really wanting to like Challengers. I liked the marketing campaign. I liked the trailer. I liked the way everyone was looking.
Okay.
But I'm going to tell you, Joe, this might be the one. This might be the review where you say, all right, Grandpa, you've had a good run, but it's time to stop talking.
This review?
It's this review I'm about to do.
Are you sure it wasn't?
This one.
Previous episode?
What, Civil War?
Yeah.
I think I came
Wait,
out
hold
on
on
that
now, hold
one
on now.
smiling.
So what you're setting up right now is that you did not like this movie?
I'm just telling you, this might be the review.
I'm going to be quiet.
It might be the review.
I want to hear what's up.
Where you put me on a barge and set me on fire and push me out into the sea. And everyone says something nice about me, but this might be the review where everyone says he's lost touch. He's out of touch.
Wow. Okay. Well, or you're
maybe. Maybe my instincts are sharper than ever.
Oh.
Maybe I'm actually at the top of my fucking game. You be the judge, but either way,
I'm sitting back.
I am here to tell you that Challengers ain't got it where it counts, baby. And when I say it, I mean that indescribable brand of cool, sexy spectacle that Hollywood lives on like the undead vampire that it is. Challengers thinks it has it. It wants you to think it has it. It does not have it. The best way I can summarize this empty exercise in style. And Joe had a little inkling of where I was going to go with this review, and I feel like was subtly sabotaging my review in his review.
It's a miracle how much I didn't say in my review. But you go ahead. I'm going to sit here and take notes. I brought a pen this episode.
The best way I can summarize this empty exercise in style is that it reaches its climax in the first minute or two of the movie. The film is never more potent than in the opening sequence, and I was on board from the beginning. I was having a ball because there is a sequence that opens the movie where this sort of out of the way, nothing, low stakes tennis tournament in New Rochelle is suddenly transformed before your eyes into this hyper stylized heaven of pure cinema. Oh my God, Atticus Ross, Trent Reznor, the pounding, moody EDM comes in. It has a little more club in it though than their like Fincher soundtracks, which I liked. It has a little more beat to it. That starts coming in. Zendaya enters. She's looking like Gen Z Faye Dunaway. She's so cool. She sits down center court. This camera just starts swooping like a fucking eagle across the court. Everything is happening, and I am entranced, baby. I am at the club, and it is the 90s all over again. I'm tripping my ass off watching Challengers, and I love it. But the reason it's working for me in these opening moments is because the dynamics between all the characters are still cryptic to us. The history is unknown. We know there is some sort of tension hanging in the air between our three principals, but we don't know what it is. And so the hyper-stylization acts as this really exciting prophecy of what's to come, a sort of overture to the movie, an abstract overture for the movie we're about to see. But the movie that is promised by that opening sequence, something tense and seductive and intricate in its construction, is not the movie that is ultimately delivered. And the movie for me never reached the heights, never reached what ended up being for me the climactic heights of the opening minute of the movie, because the more that we learn about the characters and the story and the history, and it's jumping around in time and all aiming towards we know there's some sort of fundamental act of betrayal or something that splits apart this threesome. And as we get to it, the movie actually loses tension for me, loses stakes, because I felt that the performances ultimately were uninspired. I thought the directing was just sort of wacky and directionless. And I felt like the story was not as compelling as it thought it was. And specifically, I thought the sex in the movie, despite all the fucking hullabaloo all over Twitter, I thought the sex was kind of blah and not really that sexy. Challengers aspires to Almodovar levels of daytime TV as high art, but it ends up way closer to the daytime TV than the high art. This is like a very special episode of Saved by the Bell, the one where AC Slater teaches Zach Morris how to jack off.
Fuck you.
Fassbinder also seems to be an influence here. I don't know about that. Maybe if Fassbinder had survived,
was Fassbinder really an influence on famous queer filmmaker Luca Guadagnino?
And maybe but it's not a comparison that helps Guadagnino at all, because the only Fassbinder that this is like is the Gatorade commercials he would have been roped into directing to pay for his coke habit if he had lived past 40. Not any of the ones that we actually have in his filmography. The closest contemporary comparison, I think, to Guadagnino's style here in Challengers is Paolo Sorrentino, the director of The Great Beauty, The Young Pope, etc. But whereas the stylistic touches in The Great Beauty work for me at a very deep level because Sorrentino roots those stylistic touches in character and culture and performance, Challenger tries to lay those stylistic touches over some very uninspired performances and confused direction, like some kind of Instagram filter, in the hopes that cool will just magically happen somehow, and it doesn't, at least not for me. This movie reminds me of if when Soderbergh went to edit The Limey in post-production, he didn't find what he was looking for. We talked 2 weeks ago on Weekend at Bergman's about how Soderbergh's The Limey, which I think also provides an interesting analog for talking about Challengers. Soderbergh got into the editing room and had sort of a linear noir and didn't like what he was seeing, and so he starts chopping it up. He starts adding in these interesting sort of unexpected musical cues. He starts adding sort of, actual footage of the actors. He starts really playing around with it in post and found an incredible movie within the footage that he didn't like. To me, Challengers feels like that kind of movie. It feels like a movie that when they got into the editing room, whether or not this was the intention, they start chopping it off. There's all these time jumps, but the time jumps are so confusing. They have to put so much freaking text on the screen. I felt like I was like looking through a newspaper half the time to watch the movie. In addition, while the EDM was the Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, that what essentially became the theme song of Challengers.
Yeah, it's called a score.
The first time I heard it, really, because I thought a score had some sort of variety and rhythm to it, not just the same song pounded over and over again into your skull in order to blind you to the movie's flaws and to apparently obscure some of the dialogue. Because although I liked it the first time it came in, and I'll say the second and third time, by the 8th time they were playing that song, I was like, please, what is happening here? And they would even bring it in over like the ends of scenes that had important dialogue, and I couldn't hear the freaking dialogue. I'm leaning forward in my seat. I'm looking over at the only other person up in the balcony saying, Did you hear what Mike Feist just said? I can't. It seemed important. I think it was somebody's name. I don't know. They didn't know either because nobody could hear anything. So whereas this worked for the Limey, to me, the Challengers was a should have fixed it in pre-movie because you didn't find what you were looking for in post. Let's talk about the performances and why I don't like them. Mike Feist should be known as the guy with the best bone structure in your local community theater, not as Hollywood's next big thing.
Brett. Like even you know that one. Look at Brett. Put the camera on Brett. He knows that one is a little extra. He loved it though. All right, I'll give you that. No,
come on.
Say it again.
All right. You want to hear one more time?
Take it from the top. Yeah.
All right. Mike Feist should be known as the guy with the best bone structure in your local community theater, not as Hollywood's next big thing. Now, before you say you don't agree with that, out of the 3 principals, who do you think, who was your least favorite performance?
I think Zendaya.
Really?
Out of the 3, and I thought they were all good.
Interesting. Okay.
But Feist, it's between her and Mike.
And her face. Okay,
Josh I like the best.
Yeah, well, he had the most to do. He got to be the bad boy. He got to be the villain.
Right.
I think Feist and Zendaya did not get good direction in this movie. I think they were told to be, particularly in the sort of later timeline in the movie, I think they were told to be sort of icy, emotionless, and I think that is a hard note for younger actors. And to me, what I was getting was just sort of nothing. To me, Feist gave a sort of blah performance. He looks incredible. The sweat dripping off his face is incredible. Yeah. All of that is great. The performance to me was blah. Josh O'Connor is doing an impression of bad boy charisma, but it couldn't seduce a loaf of bread.
Tell it to your wife, asshole.
Much less the baddest woman on the planet. And I'm talking about Tashi Duncan, not Zendaya, who we'll get to in a second. Josh O'Connor, I think, and look, I can't blame the guy for this, but it was a classic British guy trying to do like a cool American character, and you get a lot of that in the performance. You get a lot of like he's trying to pull from like young Mickey Rourke, he's trying to pull from young like new Hollywood bad boys, and I just don't think that's what that guy does as an actor. I loved him in The Crown when he's playing dumb little Prince Charles. I loved that. He was very good at that. But bad boy charisma, I don't think that's where Josh O'Connor lives. I wasn't really feeling it from him. Zendaya is very cool and very sexy. She, again, looks like a Gen Z Faye Dunaway in these outfits. I thought among the 3, although I did not like her performance, I thought among the 3, she played the best within Guadagnini's style. But I don't want to see Zendaya used as a prop. I thought, which ultimately is what I felt like she was being used as. Her performance, the problem I had with it, and again, this could have gone back to the direction and how she was sort of directed to do the performance, but the performance lacked the kind of nuance that turns dialogue into a credible human being. And specifically, she has a problem for me getting from A to B, where you're starting at emotion A. You're horny, and then you're trying to get to B. You're pissed off because something just happened, right? Some sort of problem in the relationship just surfaced. And she just goes always straight from A to B. There's not that sort of gradient sort of in between that gets you from A to B. And then when she's in moments of crisis and confusion, when she's feeling 3 things at once, I don't see that in her face. I don't see her feeling 3 things at once. That thing that great actors can do where they're giving you a layered performance and you believe the tension because you can see them wrestling with an experience. I don't see that from Zendaya. Her performance to me happened in blocks of emotion. She's this, then she's this, then she's this, then she's this. But it did not have the sort of nuance or layering that I look for in a really compelling performance. Like I said, I found the sex to be blah, although props to the marketing team for somehow convincing all of the internet that we had never heard of threesomes before. I don't know why everyone is like all going crazy in goo goo gaga Looney Tunes eyes as though this is the sexiest movie on the face of the earth. I mean, seriously, I was like, and I kind of fell into it. I was like, the threesome scene, this is going to be so hot.
It was.
But at the end of the day, it was.
It
wasn't. It was not.
It
thought it was hot, but to me, this is This is the first sort of backlash of this sort of like Gen Z what is it, like sort of a Gen Z sort of like prudishness around sex, or sort of like a sort of like sex as like
post Me Too puritanical,
over stylized like performance, but not like I could not.
This movie is about foreplay.
Let's just say that all the sweat happens on the tennis court and not in the bedroom.
Right, that's almost like it's the fucking point of the movie. That is the point of the movie. The sex is the tennis, which is said in the dialogue.
No, you mean the tennis is the sex.
Thank you. Sorry, excuse me.
Okay, the tennis
is the sex. And literally, when he puts you in the ball at the end and you're just getting pounded by the two boys back and forth, that's what we're fucking paying for. Tennis is the sex.
All right, let's go off of that then, because I like that as a premise. I like that on paper. What gets in the way of really experiencing that to me is that this guy, I don't know, I'd have some anxiety that not enough was happening, or some sort of sense that like I've got to do more and more and more. This guy's pulling so many camera tricks out of his bag, and half of them to me didn't work. I love some of the big swoopy moves with the camera. I hated when this turned into a first-person shooter for the big climactic tennis match. Literally, you're like, it's like the camera gets strapped to the tennis players, and you're seeing like through their eyes, and then you see the racket come up. It's literally like playing a first-person shooter. It made no sense for this movie, for this plot and these characters and the situation. It made no sense, and it didn't do a lot for the sex as tennis thing. To me, the sort of pounding of the ball back and forth, that I started to see what you're saying. But I'm not going to give a movie credit for just thinking of a theme. It needs to execute the theme, and to me it did not execute that theme of like the tennis is where they work out their sexual frustration because they're too embarrassed to do it in real life, or whatever, or there's too much,
it's all the same,
or they do too much tennis, that their bodies are these like
they're
fucking
obsessed.
athletic temples, and sex becomes some sort of dilution of their perfectionism, their athletic perfectionism, so they have to fuck on the court. I love that as a theme. I just don't think that theme was executed, because the camera to me started to feel just sort of directionless and just constantly sort of there wasn't to me like a lot of consistency in the style. It was like, let's just try a lot of different stylistic touches and see if any of them work. I was also shocked, considering how beautiful the movie is and considering how amazing that, like, you get that little cold open before the sequence love of their isolated faces.
Before the MGM logo comes out. It's pretty cool.
And I sat in my seat. I said, this is going to be the best movie I've ever seen. That, like, it had such promise to me out of that opening sequence.
It was
but
cool.
They weren't able to me to build sort of story and character to make the visuals really to ground the visuals in some sort of meaning that was interesting to me or that I could follow or read into. And this movie, despite that, had a surprising lack of like iconic shots. For a movie that seems to constantly be going for iconic shots, it had a surprising lack of them, and there were some that came so close, and I'm just like, why didn't you just like sort of frame that better and like and be patient? There's such a lack of patience in terms of the way shots are structured, because he's trying to jump to the next big sort of camera trick. You know, it's like can I just get like 2 more seconds of seeing like a wide shot of Zendaya sitting in the crowd because he looks amazing before you strap the camera to the fucking tennis ball, please?
The last minute of a 2 hour and 15-minute long movie.
Now this is where we get to it, because the irony of the movie is that although I think he's doing too much, and the movie is kind of frenetic in how much the camera is moving around, this guy, I mean, I read that he doesn't like sports movies and didn't like sort of know a lot about sports movies.
He doesn't like tennis because of the way that they film it.
Got it. But I was also reading that he wasn't like a real fan of sports movies, though.
Okay,
I think that's believable,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Like, well, to me, it's totally believable in the way this movie is played out, because one of the key things in sports movies, right, is like the last second shot. Every sports movie is working towards like a last second shot scenario, right? And the way that you make that last second shot interesting is the hard work of a sports movie, and I think the undervalued part of a sports movie is getting the logistics of the game right, getting up to the final shot so that the audience is sort of on board for that final shot and has been following the back and forthness of the match. But this big climactic match is cut up into 20 different pieces, and then you're constantly going back and forth in time in and out of this match. The match itself is not presented with any real sort of clarity, even though there's constant text on the screen of like first set, second set, third set, match point, tiebreaker, etc. It did not have the flow to me of an effective sports movie where you can follow the sort of back and forthness. It would literally just cut back to the main match, the climactic match of the whole movie, and it's just like somebody gets an ace, and then it's like the set's over, they won that set, and I was like, oh, they did? Okay, so like where are we now? Like, okay, it's 1-1. The movie, the big climactic tennis match did not have. It was sort of like just too cut up. But then when we get to the last second shot, then when we get to the match point tiebreaker part of it, the thing slows down to the crawl of a mouse,
right?
And then we're just sitting there forever. Well, I didn't like it. I don't care if it's the point. We're sitting there forever waiting for them to hit the ball, and then they do this thing that I will not give away because it's a spoiler, but they do a callback to a thing earlier in the movie. I saw it 4 minutes before it happened because this movie's going so slow.
I saw it when they did it in Act 1.
And then when they did it as though it's like, remember this? And I was like, Of course I remembered this. I knew you were going to do it 4 minutes ago. Hit the fucking ball already, okay? It is, I guess, what are you going to say, Joe? It's like edging as tennis. Tennis as edging.
No,
sex
tennis as
tennis,
sex.
Sex and blah, blah, blah. That's great on paper. It didn't happen for me on the screen. There were two scenes that I liked, and here's why I liked them. There was two sex scenes that I thought were effective. There was a scene in a dorm room where Josh O'Connor and Zendaya are hooking up, but don't have sex. And then there's a scene later where Zendaya, after she's married to Mike Feist, are going to have sex the night before the big match, and then it doesn't happen. And these two scenes are great for me because they show how two super horny people who are about to have sex can suddenly sort of realize the emptiness of their relationship because something in the sex or the moment is not going right, and how that is such an insurmountable thing to get past in a relationship when that moment of like horniness like crumbles, and then you're just like staring at this person and like all the problems start pouring out. I thought those two scenes were handled well. The only problem was, again, this acting style that just goes from point A to point B really quickly and misses a lot of the nuance and gradient in between. And then the other thing is he brings in that fucking EDM pounding score over the end of the scene, and I'm like, why? Don't you trust your actors? Don't you trust the dialogue? Save it, baby. I've already heard it 20 times. By the end of the movie, I was audibly groaning.
I don't even know what to do with that. It's just like I guess, the boring like not good podcast version is like, I guess we disagree, but let me push back on a couple of your points.
Let's find.
I just disagree. First of all, the time jumps, they worked. They were totally clear. It ping-ponged back and forth like a tennis match, so to speak. Also, what Brett's talking about, like following the tennis match, like maybe you just don't know how fucking tennis works. Like, it was very simple to follow. It was incredibly straightforward. In fact, they literally, like you said, wrote it on the screen the whole entire time. I had no problem following it. Yeah, like if you couldn't follow it, then you just either A, are probably too busy staring at your phone, or B, just don't know the fucking rules of tennis.
You know who didn't need to provide text for every time jump? Steven Soderbergh in The Limey. It's doable.
It's not a sports movie. Or whatever. It's a totally different. How am I supposed to argue that? Yeah, okay. Steven Soderbergh didn't use that in The Limey, but I actually found this to be a great sports movie. It has what a lot of sports movies don't have, which is it's fucking exciting like a sports game the whole entire time, and the tension builds. And just like in a sports game, oh, there goes Kyle Lowry, and he pushed a little bit off of whoever's on the stupid Knicks, Jalen Brunson, and now Jalen Brunson's a little bit more mad. And this movie is a tale of sex told through bites of churros and like
a tale of sex told by an idiot. To quote the Bard, eyes
going back and forth. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know what Brett's saying when he says that this movie isn't sexy. Like that, I don't know what Brett needs in order to feel sexiness. But like,
Zendaya is sexy.
Maybe you should like
the two guys are sexy. That alone does not equate to the movie itself being sexy.
You know, I had to turn down my antidepressants too, to increase my sex drive. You might want to take a look at that. Then, like, who watches Challengers and is like, that wasn't hot. It was hot. Like, I don't know what we need. Do we need to fucking see them Eiffeling towering her for fucking 30 minutes? And you need to see fucking cum all over the screen? What do you need, weirdo?
It was children like mimicking sexiness the whole time.
Look, if the sex of the threesome seems jejune to you or whatever, it seemed timid, it's because they were 18-year-olds, two of the guys that obviously have more than just friendship, some sort of sexual tension between them that don't know how to activate it, is immediately seen by this woman, and she very much is into their weird, they love each other, they don't know they love each other, they want to fuck each other, they don't know that they already have sort of dynamic, and she just teases and teases through that scene. But it is important to remember that at that part in the movie, which they had words up on the screen, that showed you what year it was or whatever. They were 18 years old. Like, they shouldn't have had some sort of like dynamic, developed threesome situation fucking put down. The fact that Zendaya could control it so much showed how smart Tashi was and how pointed she was. I thought that scene was incredibly sexy. It wasn't incredibly climactic sexually because they're just a bunch of fucking kids.
I agree with everything you just said, and that's why I don't think it was sexy, but it was aspiring, I think, to sexiness, and that's why I think it gets sort of lost in the middle. I would have liked them maybe to play more into the humiliation, more into the sort of awkwardness of it, but it seemed like it was constantly getting lost in the middle. That it was almost like it felt an obligation to like high sexiness, like high level.
I don't know if it was an
sexiness.
Obligation, but it was certainly a striving for.
And look, this is also a movie I also wonder. I mean, I know how to watch movies. I watched it with I watched it with like a clean slate.
But do you know how to watch tennis?
I know how to watch it with a clean slate. I used to play tennis. I watched it with a clean slate, but this was one of the movies where the marketing campaign is so prominent beforehand, and the sort of hype around the movie is so prominent that I wonder if that played a little bit into my anticipations around the movie.
I understand. Yeah. I think it's still like, I think there is all of the there's all the like extracurricular sexual activities, like maybe things that like we don't delight in, like these power games. Like, this seems to be a major kink for Zendaya in the picture, and like that's not like our bag necessarily. But like, I like a movie about beautiful, crazy, athletic, like rich Adonises all obsessing about power sexually, and I found it to be very like fun to watch, and it made me be like, oh. And then I like the status shifting between them when Josh O'Connor comes to visit Mike in the sauna, and all of his like childish, sophomoric dick swinging turns in. Mike finally stands up for himself and like lashes him with his tongue and tells him what a little boy he is and leaves. That shift, that is like its own sort of sex move in and of itself, and the constant shifting status and the constant shifting dynamics between the three. It's just titillating and exciting, and I totally found it to be engrossing, and I liked the sports element of the movie. I don't know if Brett's like wrong that they're throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall of a sports movie but I think that it's a very gay sports movie, and it's very fun to watch them throw it at the
on paper. I love all this on paper. I'm wearing a fucking tennis outfit. I want to look like Richie Tenenbaum.
No, for sure, you're wearing a tennis outfit.
Movie.
Yeah.
Like, the power games is very interesting because, again, that would work for me on paper. The threesome on paper works for me. The issue is, and I can give you a very specific example, is because we also watched Being John Malkovich this week
which was interesting similarly.
Yes, for Weekend at Bergman's, which is coming on after Movies Baby if you're on the Patreon. Catherine Keener in Being John Malkovich is like, if I could have got a little bit more of that from Zendaya, I think a lot would have worked. I give you one specific example. They're doing the big 3 kiss. Oh my god! I've never heard of sex before. I think it's so
Brett,
sexy.
how many times do you, in the movie theaters do you go and see very famous Zendaya making out with 2 guys? It's fun. It's fun. He didn't write like, here's my sexual manifesto and here's what I'm going to like demand you all get off.
The movies are going to be like now. I guess I never get to be horny again in the cinema.
What are you talking? I don't understand.
Thanks a lot,
it's the
Gen
opposite.
Z.
This is the opposite. This isn't. First of all, this movie's not made by Gen Z.
I know.
Second of all,
I'm kidding.
This movie is sexy.
All right, but here's the thing. Okay, so
how
you can't be sexy though if you're not hitting the beats, okay? Because it's still a movie. I'm not sitting there fucking jacking off in the theater. I'm watching a movie.
Remember the Love Lies Bleeding guy? Remember the picture of that guy?
Yes, I do. Yes, right. Yeah. So all of this is we're talking about watching a movie, right? This is all going on in my head.
Yes.
So my brain is not going to lock into sexiness if the beats are not hitting, okay? Because that's the pleasure of it for me, is that the character beats have to be working as well, right?
Okay.
In a movie like this. And when Zendaya, so they go in for the big 3 kiss, right? The big 3-person kiss, and that we all heard about 100 times. And then I like this move. She leans back, and then they're just kissing each other like passionately,
hardcore. It's
right?
great. Yeah,
and
it's
it's
awesome.
all their sort of homoerotic longing is coming out in a sort of like sanctioned way that doesn't make them feel gay or whatever they're worried about. All that worked. But then Zendaya leans back on the bed, and they cut to her, and she sort of smiles, and it just doesn't hit the right note for me. It is sort of a like corny young actor trying to sort of be a little Lady Macbethy or something, and it just plays as silly, and then the whole thing falls apart, and I'm like, this is just at every level, this is kids aspiring to something beyond them, both not just in the movie itself, but also the actors themselves. And I did not, if I could got a little more of that Catherine Keener edge from Being John Malkovich in Zendaya's performance, I think it would have made the whole fucking engine click for me, but I don't get it, and so I don't like the movie.
Hey, you know what? Here's Catherine Keener in Being John Malkovich is like a woman. Sorry to be weird, but then Zendaya is like a young woman in this movie. So like she's not like the object of our desire, so to speak. Like she's insanely beautiful. No one's arguing that. Like so I hear what you're saying, but like I just like foundational. Like I think that you're saying, oh, these kids are acting like kids. And I think what I'm just saying is like, they are kids and they're also kids in the movie. And that's sort of like the pleasure here. Or like their youthfulness is like what's interesting here. And if it didn't work for you, that's totally fine. But I think that like, that's where, I think that Luca knows they're kids and that's where he gets all of his fun. And you can just do with that what you will, whatever you think of Luca.
So, but the problem with Luke is always because there's another version of this movie where Luke is just like, all right, let's pump the brakes. This isn't going to be my masterpiece, but let's sort of back away and do Cruel Intentions. Let's like back up and do Cruel Intentions, right?
You think one could simply just do Cruel Intentions?
But let's aspire more to that,
okay.
Right? But the whole movie constantly is not aspiring to that. It's aspiring to something closer to art house cinema, and so my expectations are going to be higher. Basically, what this comes down to is, and look, hey, take a swing all day, baby. John Starks, keep shooting. I'm not going to blame you for... I love that this movie exists. I love what it was attempting to do. I love it on paper, all of that. I'm not mad. It's not like it's like it's like we're in the 18th Marvel movie of the year and I'm pissed that the movie exists. I love that this movie exists. I love that it topped the box office this week, all of that. But ultimately, for what it was aspiring to, it was a miss.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to say. That's what I'm going to say.
I find... Last thing I'll say, and thanks for like hashing this out. And thanks for listening, and thanks to the great Margot Padilla for being our producer engineer over there. I love a movie like a Spring Breakers or like a what's the big Barry Lyndon, where it's like
love both of
these reality stars, these young up and comers, these people that we knew as children are now adults, and they want to jump off a ledge and do something zany and sexual and like, bad for you. And Zendaya picked such a sleek vehicle for her coming out party as a main character leading lady. I don't know if she hits all of her highest highs, but I think that there's enough there, and she has the gravity of a star. She has star power. She has presence. She's beautiful, and she's smart and she's talented. I kind of like her steeliness. I think it's actually more practiced than maybe you're giving it credit for. I think like the steeliness is a decision kind of for the Tashi character and all of that she's had to go through and what her bugaboos are in this film. But I think that she has a lot to grow, and I think like I'm excited to watch her grow. Like it's all there for her.
The steeliness is fine for me. It's like the problem is like steeliness in a movie like this. The steeliness has to crack at some point, and the cracks are where the major dramatic scenes.
But what about when they crack during the storm scene and when she fucks O'Connor again?
Oh God, that scene was.
The storm was amazing.
There is
the storm. He does this like heightened, like fantastical realist sort of like Shakespearean tempest, which is so fun. Like it's so on the nose, but he does it so heightened. It's like Oscar Wilde. Like I sort of. He has like a groundedness to his flashiness that I find charming and I find beautiful. I'm not saying he's my favorite director. You mentioned Sorrentino, and I prefer Sorrentino, but Sorrentino's based in like the dour Catholicism of heterosexuality that we come from, and Luca comes from the queer cinema.
Well, what did I say at the beginning of the review, Joe? Maybe this is the one where you put me on the barge and push me out to sea.
You know what?
And I'm fine with that. When my time comes, I will gracefully accept it. I ain't going to be sitting here like Jerry Seinfeld talking about how nobody gets it anymore and everything's too woke.
This ain't going to be the one,
if
man.
If everyone stands up and says,
fine.
You're done, buddy, this movie rocks, fine.
No, we disagree. I seriously had fun. I like recommended this movie to a couple people. I think it's fun. I think it's a good movie. I had a blast seeing it, and I'm not mad. I'm not as mad as Civil War. I'm not as mad as Civil War.
I will say to everyone out there who's getting swept up in Challengers, check out Ken Russell's Women in Love, baby. It did competition as homoeroticism better and hotter, and it did it fucking. I looked it up. You know, that movie came out 56 years ago.
That's insane.
56 years ago.
Well, the past is incredible.
Oliver Reed and Alan Bates wrestling naked before a fire. Buddy.
Look, yeah, I mean, this movie, to Brett's point, like, is this movie the sexiest movie of all time? No, there's so many sexy movies from the past. But in the puritanical Hollywood that people operate in now, it is fun to get this, like, flash bang of like sexual vibrancy.
Let's step away from the movie for 1 second though before we look at the box office. I do want to say about the sexiness. Don't you think we all got a little hoodwinked though, or hoodwinked ourselves with like the marketing campaign versus the reality of the movie? Or does that not matter at all?
That doesn't matter, but I understand, but it happens.
Yes.
It happens, but like you're not doing this, but I'm just saying, like, if we were to, the marketing campaign's not part of the movie. The marketing campaign's like a fun thing to talk about as part of the movie making process. But when I'm talking about like the product, like the actual piece of art as the director intended it, like the director, unless they're crazy, like in the past, like Kubrick used to do, they don't have anything to do with the marketing. You know, like The Fall Guy is coming out next week.
We'll talk about that.
Remains to be seen how the movie's going to be, good or bad. But the marketing campaign is so in our faces that we're kvetching about it at work. You know what I mean? Like, but that's not the Fall Guy's fault necessarily. I mean, you know, whatever. What I'm saying is, they did hype this movie up. That's exactly what I would have done. Like what we would have done at Forever Dog. Been like, oh, we got the hottest star in Hollywood and she's gonna have a threesome. Blah, 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 blah. That's how we would have done it too, because that's where the fucking money is. You know what I mean? But like that's not like Luca's fault that he's probably texting his boys like,
guys,
come on, man, it's a lot more than just this one scene.
I mean, based on the marketing, I thought there was gonna be like scenes of like Josh O'Connor like eating Mike Feist's butt.
That's what I mean. Look, we all want that, and we can all like go home and imagine that in our own time, but that didn't happen in Challengers, folks. It didn't happen. Brett's right. No, it did not.
No, there's not a single actual sex scene in the movie.
Right. That's the point. It's a movie about foreplay. It's about tennis.
Here's what I'll say. I still am standing on my side of the net, so to speak.
Okay.
That is the one point that you're like, because I knew obviously I knew that's what they were going for, but your defense of it, that the tennis, the actual sex scenes are essentially 3 or 4 extended edging scenes, and then the tennis is where they fuck.
Yeah, and then they come when they like win at the end. They all win together.
Yes.
They all come together.
I'm liking you describe it, but I have to be honest with the way.
Okay.
Like, I kid you not, I audibly groaned like at the end of the movie.
I don't think you've been kidding me for 1 second this entire time. I believe you.
I do like. I wish you could have given notes. I wish you could have seen an early version. This is given notes.
Well, my notes would have been a great job. I liked it so much.
Margo, can we see the box office? I know Challengers was first this week, but let's see what else happened.
How much money did it make? I'm excited to learn here live with everybody. How'd it do?
The consensus
25?
The consensus is it did well.
Okay.
There it is. First
15.
But then it did the international release simultaneously, and it was like top in the box office in Canada, UK, et cetera, et cetera. So it was not a cheap movie. It was like the budget was in the 50s. But it's already basically there internationally. So it worked. It's his biggest opening. It was bigger than Call Me by Your Name.
Which makes sense,
Which
right?
makes sense because that was a movie that sort of like was discovered after it came out more so.
And that movie's about gay sex. This movie has Zendaya in it. It's just, duh.
Right. Yes. So look, it did great. He's going to keep making movies, and God bless him for it. This is, man, at some point we have to reckon with like the alternate Christian cinema that is like
Brett,
that is
I
building.
agree. What the fuck is this?
So Unsung Hero is and it came out from Lionsgate. It wasn't like
Lionsgate likes money.
It was but it wasn't like the 700 Club Productions.
Right.
Right. So Unsung Hero is some sort of Christian family movie.
There is an alternative. There's an alternate movie world, dude.
Yes, in every aspect of American culture right now, there is just another like
reality,
like far right Christian version of and look, calling this far right is aggressive. It's like a family movie, but it's still like it's like the family movie for that sector, for the red states, right? So it's like, but look, I mean, it's racking up.
It did great.
Second in the box office this week. That ain't nothing.
It made half of what Challengers made. Like that's huge. It's 50% what the biggest movie of the week made. That the whole Christian right family, whatever the hell movement can inspire that much box office. Is crazy.
I bet they schedule these intentionally of like, Challengers is coming out, so do Unsung Hero that week, and then we can do the whole like don't go to the
threesome movie,
the threesome with two guys in it. Now if it's a threesome with two women in it, then
wait till the next
week. Wait till the next week.
We gotta go.
Guys, stop going to see Godzilla versus Kong. What are you doing? What are you doing?
It made $181 million. That's insane.
What are you doing? That's the worst movie of the year. We're in week fucking 10 now. Stop going to see Godzilla versus Kong. Civil War hanging in there. Abigail still racking up some money. I mean, Abigail making $5 million.
That's nice. That's a tasty 18 mil for Abigail.
Yeah, okay. It's still, I mean, I think it was a $30 million budget, but internationally it should be fine. But still, we're not seeing horror like crush this year,
right.
Interestingly. Ministry still making money. Love that. That I thought Boy Kills World, that like Bill Skarsgård like shoot 'em up was going to get a bigger release. I guess it just didn't get a big release.
I didn't even learn about it, and we go to the movies all the time until I went to the movies like a week ago, and there was a trailer, and I was like,
the trailer's crazy.
I was like,
is wild.
Yeah, it's giving Monkey Man
shoot 'em
on
up.
acid.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Video game shoot 'em up thing. And then, man, the studio figured it out. These re-releases are going to become a thing because
so good.
The Phantom Menace re-release is next week. I'm very interested to see where Phantom Menace re-release ends up. Joe, before we go,
me too, Brett. That's true.
Two more things. We want to briefly talk about a movie we agree on wholeheartedly, and then we're going to look at this weekend's new releases.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, Joe, earlier this week, we always talk about how Thursday night is our favorite movie night because we just watch something that is not homework. We don't watch a movie that's for this show. Or so I thought. I was flipping through the streamers, and I saw Jason Statham in The Beekeeper. I was coming off that Guy Ritchie high, so I was like, I need more Statham.
That night, I watched Wrath of Man.
Wow, see,
because I couldn't watch enough Ritchie, and that's a Statham Ritchie. But I didn't. And Wrath of Man's good, but Brett, go on. Sorry, excuse me.
Look at that, and that's the relationship in a nutshell. We're at each other's throats over Challengers, and then we're both watching Jason Statham movies the same night.
That's right.
Look, I watched The Beekeeper. About 10, 15 minutes in the movie, I texted you, and I was like, Joe, I'm watching the funniest movie I've ever seen. It's called The Beekeeper. You have to watch it. The next day, Joe texted me. He's like, I'm watching The Beekeeper. I cannot stop laughing. And I want to say out of the gate, it's not supposed to be a funny movie. It's an action movie.
Right.
Also, us laughing at it is not like making fun of the movie. No. It is just like joyous, silly action at just such a fun, frenetic level. It makes not that much sense. I think it's basically it's about a guy that used to be part of a secret sort of society of like killers called the Beekeepers, and they protect the hive or whatever. And then one of his friends gets killed, and then he burns down the country to avenge this person, basically.
Well, it's his sacred duty is to protect the hive.
It's his sacred duty. Okay?
It's part of America. There's one person always alive called the beekeeper, and this person's job is to protect the hive. And whenever this person deems the hive out of whack, they're allowed to take matters into their own hands extrajudiciously, which Statham does.
It's a Statham. A Statham shoot 'em up. Statham versus the world. But oh my god, it is so much fun and so funny. Can you tell us some of your favorite parts of The Beekeeper?
This is the funniest movie I have seen in maybe a decade, and it's the best kind of laugh because it's a laugh where I wasn't laughing because it's not a funny movie. It's an action movie, and it's not an action movie that's like really bad, like The Room. So it's that kind of laugh. No. It's just like at a certain point, what you're watching sort of like catches up with your brain, and then you just sort of start to laugh, and then the movie starts to lay it on thick, and they just keep like dolloping out these little plot points and details about like the situation here, that they kicked the nest and they've angered a beekeeper and there's nothing they can do about it. This gets up to the highest levels of the government. Jeremy Irons plays like, I don't know, the Secretary of the Defense or something, and he gets embroiled in evoking the beekeeper's ire, and he's the whole entire time hilariously just reiterating over and over again that there's nothing they can do. They are fucked beyond measure. There's nothing they can do. The beekeeper is coming. They're fucked. There's just that's it. It's over. And it as the plot sort of like bubbles up into your brain. There was like a 20-minute stretch when I was convulsing on the floor, like grabbing my stomach. I had to pause it. I was crying. I was alone. You know how hard it is to laugh alone at movies. And it started becoming a blend of joy and a blend of euphoria and a blend of just like silliness. I went to a secret movie marathon this weekend, and the thrill of the movies they showed was like they're movies from the 80s, and the audience was enjoying a great kind of laugh. They're like, oh my God, that action idea was so bloated and so big, and how did they get from A to B? And everybody craved those, oh my God, ha 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 laughs. And they came in fits and spurts, but The Beekeeper has them in spades. It's a beautiful kind of laugh. It's so enjoyable. Statham is an amazing man that we've talked about a lot on this podcast randomly, but I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of this guy, Brett.
Yeah.
Amazing recommendation. And this is a real recommendation.
This is the real.
You didn't see Challengers? Okay, cool.
Watch
Beekeeper first.
You'll have a blast.
Beekeeper first.
You'll have a blast. And here's what I want to say about The Beekeeper. An example of what's so funny and enjoyable about it is I watched it. I no joke watched it 3 times this past week because I had to keep reliving some of the moments in it. This movie, my current take is, I think this movie might be some sort of like psyop by like the International Society of bee preservationists, because there is like a movie like this. All you got to do is have one line of like Amy and I going into it. Literally, our first question was like, I wonder how hard they're gonna hit the beekeeper thing. They hit it so hard. The opening credits, behind the opening credits is like a montage of old books that tells you like the history of bees. And I was like, we looked at each other, we're like, oh, they're hitting it hard. They're hitting it so hard.
He's a secret agent, but also he is an actual beekeeper.
I literally think this was like produced by some some bee society that wanted like the public to like pay more attention to bees. Is the only way I can explain it, because interspersed constantly throughout this movie is like real talk about bees and like beekeepers and how hives work over and over again. There's a scene where Jeremy Irons has to just like brief this team of killers about like, hey, like literally all I have to do is go like, hey, this is Jason Statham, the guy you're looking for. Go kill him. He's going to be at this place at this time. Instead, he goes, so in the hive, bees are tricky creatures, some of God's most intricate creatures, and sometimes when he goes off on bees. This is halfway through the movie. This is like the 5th time we've had a monologue about bees and how bees work. I fucking love this movie so much. It's so much fun, so funny.
Brett, the whole time I was like, and just wait till he uses the bees to seek vengeance. Never uses the bees as a weapon. No. He actually just walks into like a building at one point, 2 points actually, and he just casually walks in with gasoline, dumps it everywhere, says something about gotta fix the hive, and just sort of torches whole entire buildings.
In fact, the only reason that the bad guys realize that he's like a beekeeper, as in like one of these like crazy killers, is that he had retired and become a literal beekeeper.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I think he was a literal beekeeper before too, because at one point,
what's the chicken or egg? Which came first?
At one, it's like both.
The secret society or the...
He was like born into it. I don't know. At one point though, like he has to get his secret phone to call the secret order or whatever, and he pulls up like a hive and it's secretly like in the bees. Like I feel like it's all part and parcel of. Now we've both watched this movie multiple times this week. We still don't really understand what's going on.
But there's a moment where Josh Hutcherson from the Hunger Games, who's very funny in this.
He's so funny.
He's very funny. He's like a little nepo baby who's ripping off everybody in America, and then he's the guy that Jason Statham's really trying to like kill. He tells Jeremy Irons, right, who's kind of his like protector, like
it's like it's his uncle.
It's his uncle
and protector, right?
Yeah. He tells him like, this guy like we went to, like this guy showed up at the call center. Also, they picked the best villain that anybody on any airplane in America is immediately going to be like, oh yeah, fuck these guys. The villains are these Wolf of Wall Street losers who run this call center that just
scamming old people,
scams old people out of
fuck
money.
Them.
Yeah,
and they're really like dressed like millennially, and they're like being dicks about it.
You get to watch them all just slaughtered.
And the beekeeper exacts so much vengeance.
So there's a scene where the beekeeper has like blown up one of these call centers, and Josh Hutcherson is like gets a couple clues about him or something from one of the guys that survived, and one of the clues is like he's like, yeah, he kept talking about like protecting the hive, and he's like a beekeeper, and then so Josh Hutcherson tells Jeremy Irons, yeah, it's like the guy who blew up the hive, blew up the call center. He's like some kind of beekeeper, and then Jeremy Irons was like, he's a beekeeper.
He's like, yeah, I don't know. He said he was a beekeeper.
Oh no, you messed with a beekeeper, and then we realized that the beekeeper is this secret society or whatever. But the only way the link is made is because he's also a literal beekeeper.
Right.
It's a great movie. Go watch it. Go watch The Beekeeper.
It's so funny, and
it's so much fun.
We are purposefully not spoiling 3 of the funniest details that you get like at the halfway point, and I just don't want to say.
We're not spoiling anything.
Please watch this movie.
We debated like would it be fun to just like just describe every scene in The Beekeeper on the podcast. And we're like, no, we don't want to spoil it for anyone.
Joyous recommendation.
Yes, watch The Beekeeper. And Margot, speaking of other movies that are coming up, can we look at this weekend's new releases? These will be the movies that we're going to talk about next week. I like this. I think we should start like prepping people. All right, here we go. So this is a big weekend at the movies. Oh baby, we got
Lord.
The Ryan Gosling takeover is either going to hit an even higher level or going to start to start its eventual decline with The Fall Guy. This movie is being promoted like it's everyone in Hollywood is depending on it.
I know, right?
Like it's
no,
for
real.
Of those
if this
movies,
doesn't work, a lot of people are fucked.
Somebody's really on the hook for The Fall Guy.
My
for
Lord.
Fall Guy. What do you think? I don't know.
What do I think it's going to do?
Yeah.
I think it's going to underperform big time.
Think so too.
And it's going to be a big flop.
Yeah.
I think that it's too action-y for the romance seekers and too romantic for the action seekers. And they think this is a 4-quadrant movie. I think it's a 0-quadrant movie. And just because Gosling is amazing as a meme and was in the biggest movie of the year last year, it doesn't mean that he can, and I love him, he's amazing and talented. It doesn't mean that he can just like pull. It's just like, it's not going to make $50 million just because Gosling's in it. I think this movie is going to underperform. I think it's going to come in around $28-30 million, which is a lot.
I think it's going to underperform too because it has that vibe of a movie where all of the energy around it is coming from the like official publicity machine.
Exactly, Brett.
It does not have that energy of like Challengers had, where it takes on this sort of Twitter meme presence and everybody, like actual people are talking about it. It is a movie they're trying to jam down the country's throat, and that rarely works.
It's like branded content. It's
exactly.
like, yeah, exactly, man.
We also have another horror movie, Tarot, coming out. If this
can't wait.
Year's I can't wait to watch it.
It's a horror movie in the movie theaters. See you there.
Horror movie in the movie theaters about tarot cards sounds great.
Yeah, I'm there.
But if this year's any indication, horror movies have been underperforming, so I don't have a lot of hopes for it in terms of box office. And plus, it's although how great would it be if Tarot outperformed Fall Guy? It's not going to happen. But that would be really
be a dream.
When that happens, when like the movie the studios want you to go see.
But Tarot is another like movie that sort of like the Skarsgård movie this week. Like no one's talking about it.
Yes.
It neither has a meme sort of marketing campaign or a Fall Guy marketing campaign.
Yeah.
I love horror, and I've heard so little about this one.
Now,
I'm worried for Taro.
We also have
You're right.
Jerry Seinfeld's Unfrosted is coming out. This will be
fans. I asked Brett, "Hey man, it's it's a streaming release. Do we have to do it?" Brett, smartly, because he's a good producer, said, "Of course." But I don't want to watch it. I don't want to talk about it. But
nope.
I'm excited.
That's our job.
We're watching Unfrosted.
We're going to be watching Unfrosted. We're going to be talking about Unfrosted. If I can read between the lines of the actors who are currently all on a big press tour, Hugh Grant, Melissa McCarthy, Amy Schumer, etc. If I can read between the lines, and if my euphemism meter is working, it sounds like they're all saying that Jerry Seinfeld's a terrible director and didn't know what the fuck he was doing on this movie, which would not be difficult to believe. So I think Unfrosted, and I also wonder if that's the reason why he's doing this big, like he's trying to take the whole industry down with him just because he made a stinker.
Sour little grouse.
Yeah, he's going around saying the movie, his promotional strategy for his new movie, and he hasn't made a movie since fucking B Movie, is going around talking about how the movies are dead and television sitcoms are dead and the entertainment industry is dead and everything is too woke and this or that. Whereas, Tom was making a great point on Double Threat today, is a little preview of Monday's episode, that he thinks Seinfeld's big anxiety is just how thoroughly Larry David has outpaced him over the last 20, 30 years, to the point where you now look back on Seinfeld as more of Larry David's show, more likely than Jerry Seinfeld's, based on how their post-Seinfeld careers go.
Well, the truth always reveals itself.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to watch, look, maybe we get a freaking kick out of Unfrosted.
Oh, Brett.
Who knows?
I do.
Who knows? Maybe I come in here next week dressed like a Pop-Tart and I'm telling you how Unfrosted is...
better than Challengers. It turns you on more too.
And then finally, the movie I'm most looking forward to though this weekend is Jane Schoenbrun's I Saw the TV Glow.
Absolutely.
That is on my fantasy team for 2024, so I need it to be good, baby.
I'm so excited for that.
I hope you brought your A game, Jane, and I think you did because that trailer fucking rocks.
I have some little birdies that have seen this picture, and they tell me it's amazing.
Wow. Well, that might be 2 for 2 for me because we know Monkey Man did really well.
Love Monkey Man.
So
it's no Beekeeper, but
and I liked Jane Schoenbrun's first movie. We're all going to the World's Fair, and I'm excited to see what she does with sort of a bigger budget, more of a traditional kind of feature film structure. We'll see. So we're gonna watch those 4 movies. We'll talk about them next weekend. You should watch some or all of them along with us, and of course, if you love the movies as much as we do, you have to sign up for our Patreon, patreon.com/moviesbaby with 5 Ys. In addition to all the fun stuff you get over there weekly, just so much fun stuff, scenes and frames and trivia, and of course, full audio and video of our 2 shows, Movies Baby and Weekend at Bergman's. In addition, there is a new episode up. Episode 2 is now available of Sarah Freilich's After Death VHS, and I tell you what, there is nothing more enjoyable and fun and cool for a movie fan and for a VHS fan, either aspiring or a veteran or wherever you are, than watching this, than listening to Sarah Freilich talk about movies and about VHS. Yep. She knows her shit, people, and she has some great recommendations. One of her recommendations, 976 Evil Part 2. Is available in full on YouTube, and I watched it this week, and holy shit, she don't miss with those recommendations. She don't miss. Like it's honestly hard to watch. It's 80s horror camp hits like a note of authentic weirdness that makes it impossible to watch like intentional weirdness, like we were talking about this, like there was a moment even started watching Being John Malkovich in the first 5 minutes where I was like, oh right, he's trying to be weird with this, not that beautiful, sublime, almost unintentional sort of weirdness that you get.
Trying to be scary.
Oh my
whatever
God.
that is.
There's a scene in 976 Evil Part 2 where one of the characters gets sucked into It's a Wonderful Life. I don't know how they didn't just get wildly sued for this, but she's just in the TV in It's a Wonderful Life, the climactic scene, and then everybody turns into a zombie and kills her in It's a Wonderful Life. This movie fucking rocks, and Sarah Freilich takes you through that and through some other titles and through some stories from her VHS collecting adventures. So make sure you check that out only on patreon.com/moviesbaby. baby. And if you're on
Vibe-wise.
Patreon, you'll be joining us in just a few minutes for Weekend at Bergman's.
Oh yeah, Bergman's.
And if you're not, you can catch Weekend at Bergman's as a podcast coming out on Monday. Tonight we are talking about, holy shit, it's our next triple feature. We're talking about Martin Scorsese's Bringing Out the Dead versus Charlie Kaufman and Spike Jonze's Being John Malkovich versus Richard Curtis's Notting Hill.
Dang.
The theme is work-life balance. These people are all stressed out by their jobs,
They are.
y'all.
Styles.
I don't know which one's going to win. I don't know
Neither
which
do
one's
I.
going to take it. But don't miss that. We'll be back in just 10 minutes for Weekend at Bergman's. And we'll see you there. Bye. Woo!
That was great.
7:15.
I'll tell my story about the bar.
Great.
So at City Walk, the bar
Or church.
Right, where we often see the movies. There's a bar upstairs, but it opens at like 4 or 5, which is fine. But if you go at a 1 p.m. and you want to have a beer with your movie, which is nice, sorry.
You don't gotta apologize for that.
No, some people out there, who knows?
You're a hardworking fella. Have a beer with
It's
Challengers.
one of the beer
I'll
watch.
help you get through it.
Just want to have a beer and watch Challengers. But folks, if you go to the Burbank AMC 16, that bar opens at 1, and so the Grove as well. At the Grove, you get that bar open at 1, and I prefer these days. I prefer to have a beer instead of I don't like soda, but candy or popcorn. Like I prefer that beer. That's just me.
Yeah.
That's just me.
I mean that Coca-Cola. Usually I'm cocktail all day long.
Right.
I mean old fashioned, maybe Manhattan, something like that. Maybe some tequila based, depending on how I'm feeling. But when I see a Coca-Cola freestyle machine,
they are super fun.
Wild horses could not drag me away from that thing.
I had fun with the.
Even if I'm not in the mood for soda.
What do you mix? Wait, what do you mix?
I've been doing lately. Diet root beer with vanilla in it.
Okay, I had a root beer recently,
but
as
I'm
well.
a little upset by the. I don't like when the Coca-Cola freestyle machine thinks it knows me better. Like it's the thing with a chef, he refuses substitutions or something. Because I'm like, just have all the flavorings available for every type of soda.
Right.
If I want to put lime in a fucking diet root beer, let me try it.
The gatekeepers over at Coca-Cola, right?
Yeah, they're like, oh, there's only one thing that goes with diet root beer well. I'm like, says who? I'm disgusting. Let me be disgusting. It's a freaking Coca-Cola freestyle machine.
I want half fucking Coke, half blue Slurpee. It's my prerogative. It's my movie experience.
Here's what I like. This is what I call a City Walk old fashioned. It's like, I'm always sneaking in a couple.
Yikes. Whoa. Shit. We got to deal with this now. Brett, what's a City Walk old fashioned? I'm sorry, wait, hold on a second. Margaret, do you mind cutting to Brett's camera real quick? And Brett, can you start your sentence? A City Walk old fashioned.
Yeah, City Walk old fashioned